Hello, educators. Welcome to CLIU's literacy series that our professional learning team is launching throughout the month of February. My name is Kelly Tremba, and I'm thrilled to be back with you to share yet another short learning session. Today, I will be sharing some engaging and easy strategies that support analysis and critical thinking. Teachers of all grade levels are welcome. As the experts of your particular grade level, I invite you to think about what these strategies would look like in the grade level that you teach and in your own learning space. This slide deck is available to you on the YouTube page. So all of the examples and links to resources that I reference and show are available for you to use as you wish in your own classroom. I always start any session that I facilitate with a community building activity that allows me to connect with my participants. So today is no different. I'm going to start by modeling what I would do if we were together live instead of recording. On the screen, you see a question. If you could sum up the first half of the school year in a conversation hard candy, what would it say? I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. My guess is your conversation heart would recognize or reflect the amount of work that you have put into this year, the amount of time. It might be something like exhausted. My conversation heart would say thank you. I just want to make sure that I take the time to say thank you to all of you for all of the tireless efforts that you have been exhibiting to keep our students learning and to keep trucking on and moving forward. In many cases, you are their constant and you are the only thing predictable in their day. So thank you. So let's get started. I want to preface this training by just informing you all that I am the lead on all things text-dependent analysis at the IU. So if you've been in any of my trainings before, it is possible that some of these slides will look similar to you. They have a different look to them. However, the contents are very similar to what I share with my day one in my TDA training. The reason I felt it was valuable for me to share these yet again is because I do get such great feedback on these exercises and activities. They've been vetted and they do really work well and make teachers feel more confident with pushing students to analysis. So let's dig in. What does it mean? What does analysis mean, particularly in the field of English language arts? If we look at the definition on the screen, a detailed examination of the elements or structure of text. It is an examination. We are digging in head to toe, left to right. We're digging into the parts of the text. We're making connections among and between these parts, and then we're drawing conclusions on the whole. So we're going to dig in and see what this looks like. Analysis requires examining the explicit, considering the implicit, and then drawing an inference. So what exactly does that mean? What is clearly stated is the explicit information. Students must examine the words and phrases used by the author. In some cases, it is not text. In some cases, it is an image or it is a graphic. But students will examine the words, the contents, the phrases of the text that they're looking at. Then the question is, what is implied or suggested, but not directly stated? In this realm, students must consider what the author has shared and couple that with what they know to be true. So in this case, they are doing some reasoning of their own. They're digging into their own life experience, their background knowledge. And then they're going to use both the explicit evidence and the implicit evidence, and they're going to draw a conclusion. So what conclusion can be drawn based on these two pieces of evidence? So here, students will consider the evidence and pair it with their reasoning in order to draw a conclusion. So I have this nice little equation on the screen. Evidence, explicit evidence, reasoning, implicit evidence equals inference. So we're going to just take a look at what this looks like. So I have a little very short excerpt to share with you in order to demonstrate what this could look like in text. On the screen, you see an excerpt from Across the Mountains by Emma Chichester Clark. I'm going to tell you a little story. Miss Bilberry lived in a pale yellow house at the base of the Great Blue Mountains with a dog named Cecily, a cat named Chester, and two birds called Chitty and Chatty. Every morning, Miss Bilberry had breakfast in the shade of a broadleaf tree, looking out of her beautiful view of the mountains. After breakfast, she swept the path and fed the birds and animals. She watered the flowers and vegetables growing in her garden. Then she had a light lunch on the veranda. In the afternoon, she had a nap in her hammock between two swaying palms. And sometimes in the evening, she played her violin and sang a few songs before she went to bed. Sounds like Miss Bilberry lives a pretty sweet life. So let's practice and really dig into explicit and implicit evidence. So in this case, the first explicit piece of evidence, again, what is clearly stated is Miss Bilberry lived in a pale yellow house at the base of the Great Blue Mountains with a dog named Cecily, a cat called Chester, and two birds called Chitty and Chatty. So that is the evidence. Those are the words of the author. Now we need to ask our students the question and ourselves the question, what do we implicitly know about this? What is implied or suggested? So my implication is that no other humans live with Miss Bilberry. People who have several pets, like animals, and her birds must like to make noise. So in this case, I am using my personal experience to reason that no other humans live with Miss Bilberry. Otherwise, the author would have shared that. Also, the fact that she has several pets tells me that she likes animals. So in order to make an inference based on this explicit and implicit evidence, we need to draw a conclusion about these two pieces of information. So a possible inference, we need to ask ourselves, what inference can we make based on what we read, both the evidence and what we know, the reasoning? So this is a possible inference. Perhaps Miss Bilberry was alone, so she filled her home with lots of pets. They most likely keep her company and make her happy. So that doesn't necessarily have to be your inference, but that is my inference based on my life experience as well as the information that the author gave us in the explicit evidence. So we can't exactly go to the analysis part just yet. When we are inferencing, we are looking at one small part of the text in order to make an inference. When we are analyzing, we are looking at multiple parts of the text in order to draw a conclusion on the whole text. So a great question to ask your students is, how do the parts help in understanding the subject of the whole? How do the parts add up? And based on those parts, what conclusion can you draw? We only have one part so far, so now we're going to add some more parts. So here's another piece of explicit evidence. Again, what the author tells me in this particular excerpt. After breakfast, She swept the path and fed the birds and animals. She watered the flowers and vegetables growing in her garden. Then she had a light lunch on the veranda. Now, that is what the author tells us. I'm going to pair that with what I know and my reasoning. It takes a lot of hard work to take care of animals and a garden. So I know that. I know that it takes a lot of work to take care of animals and also to keep flowers and vegetables growing and keep them alive. So that's going to lead me to the inference that Miss Bilberry is a good caregiver to her animals and her plants. She's a hard worker. She must really enjoy them. Again, it might not be your inference, but it is mine. We're going to add more parts. In the afternoon, she had a nap in her hammock between two swaying palms, and sometimes in the evening, she played her violin and sang a few songs before she went to bed. What do I know about that? The implicit piece of evidence now, again, what I know is this is not a fast-paced life. It is much more relaxing and simpler than what I know. And that might lead me to draw the conclusion on this particular part that Miss Bilberry seems to be worry-free and enjoys a simple life. So in order to draw an analysis, to draw a conclusion, what needs to next happen is we add up all of those inferences, we add up all of those parts to draw a conclusion. Each of those parts will add to the whole and will enable students to make an analysis about this particular piece of text. I have a real life example here for you. Think about when we go to the doctor. When we go to the doctor, if we just shared one symptom like nausea, it would lead that doctor to believe one or a handful of different possibilities. If we add another symptom to it, now it might allow that doctor to narrow the possibilities down. Add yet another, and another, and finally the last. If you go to the doctor and you share that you have all 5 of these symptoms, that doctor is most likely going to suspect that you are having a heart attack. However, each alone might lead to a different conclusion. So this is a great example to share with students just so they can see a real life example in how analysis works and in how you truly can add up the parts to lead you to a different conclusion. So we're going to add up the parts of Miss Bilberry. We take our 3 inferences. Perhaps Miss Bilberry felt alone, so she filled her home with lots of pets. They most likely keep her company and make her happy. Miss Bilberry is a good caregiver to her animals and her plants. She must be a very caring person and really love them. Miss Bilberry seems to be worry-free and enjoys a simple life. So I'm going to give you a minute to write a sentence that could be an analysis of using these 3 parts. How does it add up? I'm going to give you a minute not only to think about this, but also to process what has been shared so far. So I'm going to guess that your analysis has something to do with Miss Bilberry's character, perhaps her being carefree, enjoying the simple things in life. Everyone might have a different analysis of this character, and there is no one right or wrong analysis as long as the students are able to explain why they drew that conclusion. And that's typically where students need some pushing and some help. So there's a lot of different ways that we can push our students in order to explain the rationale behind their analysis. We might ask them a question like this: could this be Miss Bilberry? So they can look at their analysis. Does their analysis match this picture? And they can support it with their implicit and explicit evidence. So why or why not? What about this one? Could this be Miss Bilberry? I'm guessing your students would have a lot of support to go against the fact that this is Miss Bilberry. However, we can add on to the story. If you look at the two excerpts within this excerpt that I have circled, it was a lovely life, and Miss Bilberry would have been completely happy, except for one thing. She just couldn't stop wondering whether she might not even be happier if she lived on the other side of the mountains. The more she looked, the more she wondered. So maybe this could be Miss Bilberry. Again, when we add up the parts, they'll help us with the analysis. So this is a great example of we can't draw that conclusion too early on. Although I shared with you a few of the parts in the very beginning of the story, we can assume that that's the analysis of this character. So obviously that was an exercise in drawing conclusions and drawing an analysis. But in this particular instance, we would definitely need to read on. This is another activity that we can demonstrate with students in order to help them to analyze. Let's take it a step further. Why did the author choose the imagery he or she did to describe Miss Bilberry? So why did the author describe her as living in a pale yellow house? Why yellow? Why pale? She swept the path. She took the time to sweep the path. It gives the students an image of her with a broom sweeping the path. We don't know if the path is a sidewalk. We don't know if the path is dirt. She fed the birds and animals. So we again have an image in our mind. She watered the flowers and vegetables. She had a light lunch on the veranda. So a light lunch, not a heavy lunch, not skipped lunch. And of course on the veranda, the word veranda sets a little bit of a pleasant mood. It's a pleasant image that students might create in their minds. So I propose to you, do we ever ask questions like this? So instead of asking, what color was the house? Why? Let's ask why. Why did the author create the house yellow? Why do you suppose the author described the house as a pale yellow house? What really could he have meant with those words? So let's continue to push our students and ask questions that push them into critical thinking and not just into recall and memory. So we're going to practice this same strategy, but with a visual text. So we're going to collect some explicit information. We're going to pair that with what we know, and then we're going to draw some inferences. Okay, so I have an image hidden behind this slide, and we're going to reveal 5 parts, one part at a time, until we have revealed all 5 parts. So right now we're looking at what looks to be floorboards. So in my explicit information column right here, I might have that I see a wood floor. I see shoes that are brown. They have dark spots on them. I'm going to move on to the implicit information, and I'm going to pair that with what I know. I know that a floor that looks like this is wood. I know that all of these shaded parts in here, I know that's telling me that it is worn. And also, I know that these shoes do not look new because they have a lot of shaded spots on them. They look very worn in. Both the explicit and implicit information here are going to lead me to draw the inference that this is a wooden floor in a home, perhaps. These are old, worn shoes, and this person might be not in a great situation right now. Okay, so now we've revealed just a little bit more of the picture. So now we see blue pants, we see what appears to be wooden legs, and now we're seeing a little bit more of the shoe. Looks like there's some ties right here. That's going to lead me to pair that with what I know. I know that wooden legs like this are typically part of a wooden chair or a wooden stool, perhaps. I know that these blue pants are probably jeans, and I know that people who work in labor kind of jobs wear jeans often. They also a lot of times tend to have dirty shoes. This is going to lead me to draw the inference that maybe this person was working and it appears that they are sitting down. So maybe they're tired. Okay, so now I get a little bit more information. I see that it is not a stool, but that this is a wooden chair. So I see a person, the bottom half of their body tells me that they are sitting. Over here on the left-hand side, I see a fire. So this is all going to share with me what I know. And I know that now I know this person is sitting, and I know when people sit, they are tired. And I know that when they sit close to a fire, that means that they are keeping warm. So I'm going to draw the inference that this is a person who is very tired and cold and taking a break. Now a little bit more is revealed. I see arms up, and that posture tells me that, so I would describe the posture as my explicit information, right? My implicit information is that I know this isn't the posture of someone who is just relaxing or someone who is feeling just fine. It's going to lead me to the inference that something is wrong with this person. Maybe this person is really tired, or this person is resting his head. Again, not giving us too much information. So once we reveal the final part of this picture, we get a full picture. So in this case, we see this is a man's head resting in his hands. We see some balding. We see white hair. Again, there's no curtains or any kind of comfort items in the background of this picture. We see, very similar denim-looking top to what he's wearing, and we see that he's sitting in a wooden chair. Now, what do I know about that? Well, I know a person with balding white hair. I know that this person is most likely an older gentleman. I know that this posture and with hands in the face, head resting in hands, is typically an indicator that something is wrong. So I am going to draw the inference that this is a man who is feeling sad or helpless about something based on the way his head is positioned in his hands. So let's take all of those parts and again draw a conclusion on the whole. So again, I'll ask you the question, what is your analysis of this image? This is a great organizer to help students add up their inferences to create an analysis. This organizer is linked in the slide deck, so feel free to go into the slide deck and make a copy of this for yourself to use in your own classroom. You also have my permission to change the wording and change it to be whatever you need it to be. So this excerpt on the screen comes from a publication by the Center for Assessment based on the implications of text-dependent analysis in the classroom and what it means. And I just want to take a moment to read it. Expecting students to deeply understand the underlying components and expectations of analysis will require teaching analysis through direct instruction, modeling, scaffolding, and practice throughout the course of the year. So we can't just ask students to analyze when we have, an essay question or a text-dependent analysis practice. Analysis should really be going on every day and not just in English language arts. I'm going to share with you some any day and everyday exercises, ways to really push our students to get to the point of analysis. And really, they're very simple. And they're simple ways of strengthening our students' skill of analysis. So you can see on the screen, there are 5 examples I'm going to share with you: ask why, image analysis, song lyrics analysis, think aloud, and find the evidence. The first one is just simply asking why, pushing our students to ask why, or to answer why. And I paired that with an instructional activity, and it's called AEIOU. So essentially, we're going to share a piece of text with our students, and we're going to have them identify an adjective, so the A, to describe what they read, an E, emotion, to describe how it made them feel, I, what is interesting about this text, O, what made you think, oh, or what surprised you, U, what is the question you wonder. But the most important part of this activity is that we ask why. So essentially, when they are coming up with this adjective, what they have done in their minds is they have looked at the evidence, and they have reasoned, and they have drawn an inference. I do have an organizer that accompanies this activity. And again, you can grab this from the slide deck after you're done watching. I pair it with my usual TDA session with an excerpt on the Black Death. And it really allows my participants to draw some conclusions, draw some inferences in order to determine an A, E, I, O, U, etc. So after reading this particular reading passage, the participants are typically disturbed. So if I chose the adjective disturbing, an adjective to describe what you learned, and I chose disturbing, what I would next do is I would ask them, well, what was disturbing? Find evidence in the text that it shares with me why you found this disturbing. And then I would ask them, well, why? Why is that disturbing? And that usually pushes them to the point where they can not only draw the analysis, but they can explain their analysis. And that really is what we want our students to be able to do. Another example, and we kind of did this before with the segmented 5-piece picture of the old man that you saw, but an image analysis. And again, there's an organizer that you can use on the screen. But if we had our students really dig into an image and record everything that they see and pair that with everything that they know in order to draw an inference, that will help them and lead them to drawing an analysis of the overall image. Another example, and kids will love this one, is a song lyric analysis. So this particular song, Roar by Katy Perry, it just lends itself so beautifully to this activity because, and I have this organizer here, students would just write down this stanza, and you could, create you could distribute a sheet of lyrics, and you could actually draw lines to chunk between the stanzas and number them. But right here, if we had stanza number 1, students could write down what the author is telling them, what imagery is being created in this first stanza. They will pair that with what they know, and then again, draw an inference. Once they draw all of their inferences, they can add them up to have an overall analysis. And as I said, this particular song does a great job for really telling a story, introducing a character, and then introducing some trials that the character undergoes in order to come out on the other side a different kind of character, a different person. So if this is something that interests you, I would highly recommend trying it out with this song, Katy Perry's Roar. I wanted to make sure I shared this one. So many times we as teachers don't demonstrate our thinking. Students believe that we just have all of this knowledge and we just, don't do much thinking in order to arrive at our conclusions that we draw. So this is actually a out of ELA example. As you can see, there is a pretty complex infographic on the screen that is, my guess, science content, but just giving students a really complex image or graphic and offering them some sentence stems. So you want them to talk about what they see, you want them to talk about what they know, and then give them the sentence stem, which leads me to believe that, which of course there is their inference, and then their overall analysis of this infographic is, or so I think that. So again, allowing them to ascertain their own evidence, pair it with what they know, draw an inference, and then add up the inferences in order to do an overall analysis. When we as teachers demonstrate our thinking aloud, it really is showing students how we come to draw conclusions. So I just want to encourage you, some of you tuning in today might be just an ELA teacher, but if you're not and you teach other content areas, think about how this could look in math class you can see the geometrical shaped architecture, in gym class, studying the picture and adding up the parts of the baseball player's batting stance in order to draw an analysis. Looking at the two apples, one says GMO on it, the other one is very tiny. So again, that offering students the opportunity to do some, deep thinking rather than us always coming out and telling them why those two apples look different. Give them an opportunity to draw some conclusions and ask some questions. My final example is just finding the evidence. So if we go back to the Miss Bilberry example, I have two illustrations here, and I might ask the students after we read this, I want you to choose which of these pictures better represents Miss Bilberry in Across the Mountains. And I might tell students, I want you to dig in the text. I want you to pick one, and then I want you to find evidence to support your selection, and then explain your choice. Explain your evidence as well. So that concludes the activities that I'm going to demonstrate today. However, I just want to leave you with a few resources that I think you will find really great, and they will support your campaign for analysis in your classroom. The first one is an idea that I just love. This is actually not new. This came out a few years ago, and I think that teachers would have been really nervous because it really encourages students to use their phones and to be hands-on with technology. And of course, in today's climate, this couldn't be more perfect opportunity for students to demonstrate their thinking. So it's called Book Snaps. I have on here some, again, linked within this slide. You see two examples on the screen. There's an article on it as well as some additional examples. But essentially, students take a picture of the page, they add captions, they add Bitmojis, they mark it up. They're really interacting with the text, and it's really a great strategy for students to do some deep thinking and analysis. Another one, this is a resource that will help students think deeply about texts. There's two different examples in here, interacting with text. Again, very similar to the book snaps by using some close reading annotations, but the teacher gives some guidance in that, and also having partner journals. So if you're interested in either of those strategies, check out that resource. Here is a final one. It's called 28 Critical Thinking Question Stems. Again, this is for any content area. Just, some question stems as really a support for you to encourage your students and push your students to do some analysis and critical thinking of any of the text that they're interacting with. I just want to leave you with this final thought and remind you that when we get students participating actively via discussions and really digging in and talking about their learning, their retention level is about 70%. Notice up here when they're just reading, they're only retaining about 10%. We want to push them to be able to retain the experience and what they are reading. If you're interested in having more discussions in your classroom, this is a slide that has some resources for online discussion boards for those of you who are online, and it also provides the impact of discussions in your classroom. So before I close, I just want to remind you of all of the sessions that were published by our team in January. The theme was differentiate. Please feel free to visit those. If you want to learn more about how to easily incorporate critical thinking and analysis in your classroom, I did do a session on instructional strategies that support critical thinking, and I shared them in ways that you could differentiate using them in your classroom. So check out that video if you're interested. Also, continue to follow us in February on the 23rd, which is what this video is reflecting. That will be launched on the 23rd. And then finally on the 25th, there is one final session being launched. Please don't just think that these videos are for ELA teachers. There are videos on content, building background, vocabulary, and reading, and just supporting comprehension strategies in your classroom. These are great strategies for teachers of all grade levels and all content areas. Before I close, I would just like to say thank you for attending. Feel free to reach out for support or some tech support. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer at any time. Thank you. Have a great day.